are joined by Mother Tafida Nematalla, the wife of the late Very Reverend Father Mina Nematalla, who was the first Coptic Orthodox priest to come to Australia and establish the churches. So, Mother Tafida, thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome.
So, tell us about the story of how Father Mina was chosen back in Egypt to become the first Coptic Orthodox priest for Australia.
Father Mina was an army major general. On his way to the battlefront, he went to his uncle to pray for him and to ask him for a favour. Back then, Father Mina asked him to take care of his own children should he be killed in action, as he was not sure he would return home.
Who was his uncle?
His uncle is the late Pope Carolus VI, who told him that he would return safely to his children. Father Mina replied, "I only came here so that you could pray for me." He then travelled and was away for a while. Abdel Nasser requested that the troops return home for political reasons I'm not to talk about right now. He returned straight to his uncle, who as soon as he saw him said to him, "What had I told you? This is Pope Carolus VI. He asked that they would prepare a cup of tea for him, which had never happened before. Father Mina used to make himself at home at the Patriarch's residency. At that moment, Ramez was sitting between the Pope and a bishop. The Pope then told him that he was chosen to be ordained priest in Australia, as there was none here at that time. He said, "Here's the letter in front of me, read it. They are requesting a priest over there." He then said that they have chosen him. The Pope said, "Now that you've returned home safely, we will ordain you, and you shall go to Australia." He was afraid of any exterior influence that would cause him to change his mind. Father Mina agreed to everything. The Pope insisted that it be done right away. Are you laughing? You will see what my reaction was. He was ordained, and the Pope said that the rest of the procedures will take place in the presence of a bishop in Australia. He then asked him to inform his family, blessed him, and sent him home. He came home around midnight approximately. Kids were asleep. We had no idea that he would return that day. Very few people other than him and his brother had the key to our home. We were surprised when he showed up at night. The kids woke up and were thrilled to see him home safe. After having spent some time with them, he sent them to bed as it was a school night. He always left the kids' allowance on their night table during their sleep. That day he gave it to them before they returned to bed and said, "Perhaps I would be asleep when you leave to school tomorrow." After the kids went to bed, he said, "I want to tell you something." "That is exactly what happened." I said, "Go ahead." Kids were asleep and the nanny had taken the girl to her room. He told me that he had passed by his uncle and he did not say Pope Carolus. He told me all what the late Pope told him. I was greatly surprised and replied that they had never ever ordained a priest without talking to his wife first. He asked me not to be saddened, as this was the will of God. I wanted him to take some time to think about it. He replied that they would continue the ordainment procedure in Australia. And asked me to calm down. Sure enough, I surrendered to the will of God. The next day we went to church and they asked him to stay until he finished the 40 days retreat. He had come home that previous night just to give me the news. Many priests were waiting for him in Alexandria. They completed the ordination ceremony and he stayed in St. Mark Cathedral in Alexandria. I went home with my kids and the nanny. He had to present an official document to the army to allow him to leave. One day, the late Pope Kyrillos was in his room. President Abdel Nasser came to see him as his daughter was ill and he wanted the Pope to pray for her. Of course, the Pope did so. Then the President asked him what he wanted in return. The Pope told him that Copts were experiencing trouble with a lot of issues. Abdel Nasser promised him to carry out all his demands. Father Mina had to pray the liturgy for 40 consecutive days at the cathedral, not in our church. Things went well. Later, when I saw His Holiness Pope Kyrillos in Alexandria, I looked at him, and he knew what I wanted to say. So he promised me that I will see joy and many blessings in my life. This was at the monastery when I went to visit Father Mina. I can honestly say that the Lord was present in my life and the lives of my children. Of course, when I first came to Australia, life was difficult, as I had no helpers like I used to back home. It was not easy. However, God was with us and with our children.
So how did you come to Australia from Egypt?
We had to ship everything as immigrants. It was not a round-trip journey. We had to take all our possessions. We stopped during our trip, where Abuna would pray for the liturgy with some families. Life went on and my children graduated from university. They got married and life is beautiful. The Lord has gladdened my heart with my children and grandchildren.
So did you come out by plane or by boat, or how did you come to Australia?
By boat. I remember that.
We took the boat to Australia. After his ordination, we shipped all our belongings as all immigrants do. Our first stop was at port. I cannot remember its name. I believe it was before Melbourne. We stopped also at Melbourne, and from there we came to Sydney.
So during your trip, did you do masses on the boat?
Yes, every Sunday.
He prayed the liturgy every Sunday on the ship. His son was a deacon, so he helped him all the time. Those travellers who wished to participate would come and pray with us as well.
know you came to Melbourne and you did a mass in Melbourne. The boat stopped for 2 days and then continued to Sydney. When you came to Sydney, how many families were there?
Maybe 20.
I think so.
يعني كده كان تقريبا إنما لو عايزين
But if you
أي
want an
حاجة
exact
بالظبط
account,
كده
ask the
تسألني.
church.
بس أنا فاكرة تقريبا كان
I remember
20
there were approximately 20 families.
And when you came to Sydney with these families, they didn't have anything. How did you start the first church? How did Abuna Mina start the first church?
أبونا كان جايب
He brought
كل
everything
حاجة
with him,
عشان
including the
المسبح
altar's
بالأواني
vessels.
كل لوازمه.
We
كل
shipped
حاجة
everything with
جبناها
us on
معانا
the boat.
واحنا جايين من المركب. حتى كمان بنعمل أداديس يعني معانا
During
كل
our
الدفتر
sailing,
والأيام
we had all the
وهدوم
service books and
الخدمة
vestments necessary
وهدوم
even
شمال
for his
شباب
son, the
ابنه اللي
deacon,
هيخدم معاه وكل حاجة أو واحد
with an
زيادة
extra one or two.
يعني كنا عاملين
We had it
حسابنا
all
إن إحنا
planned.
جايين.
So where was the first church established? What did you use? Was there a building or was there a church ready?
كان
The
عبارة
first
عن
church
بيت
was a wooden
خشب
house.
يعني بالخشب ومتغلف كده قعدنا فيه
So it was, I
عشان
think,
نبقى قريبين
This is
للكنيسة
where we stayed to
ونخدمها
be
وكل
close and perform all the
العشيات والصلاة
services.
وعملنا
We
اجتماعات
established
وعملنا
meetings,
شباب
youth meetings.
وكانت الحياة
Life
حلوة
was
جدا
good
عشان
because
كانت
people
الناس
were
حلوة
very
جدا
kind.
جدا ما
So-
حسيتش
I did not
بحاجة
suffer at
صعبة
all.
هيك.
so the first church that was established, I think it was in a hall. The Salvation Army gave you a hall to use.
Yes,
In
the city.
in Redfern.
ريد فيرن
Yes.
كنا بنعمل
We
أداديس
prayed
كتيرة
many
في
liturgies in Redfern.
وبعدين أما جه أكلم
His
سيدنا
Holiness the
كده
Pope asked Abuna
نروح
where
في
he
أي
would
حتة
establish a
نصلي فيها.
church.
قال له إحنا هنفتح كنيسة في العذراء.
He established it in the name of Virgin Mary, where we began to pray, and a second priest arrived. Many churches followed thereafter.
So the church the church for St. Mary, the St. Mary Church, was that the one in Sydenham?
نسينا.
And by then you had a bigger community. So Father Mina would need to baptize and marry people and everything. Yeah. So how did
وكان
you?
عنده دفتر أسرتي للزواج.
He was also
عشان
appointed a
كان
justice
سواعي
of the peace.
معظم البنات اللي بيجوا من
Many
مصر
girls came to
بيبقوا
Australia
عاملين
married,
لهم أكليل بس
but their
عاملين
marriage would not be
أكليل
consumed
لكن
until they arrived
ما
here.
بيعرفوش بعض غير لما بيجوا عندنا علشان خاطر ما يقولوا ما أعرفش وفي سواعي بيجوا
Some
من غير
girls came
الأكليل
after their
خالص
engagements.
يعني خطوبة بس
So
يعني
some
في
came
ناس
after
بتكون
their marriage
اتجوزت
and
وفي
some
ناس
after
عاملة
their
خطوبة
engagement
بس
only.
اللي عاملين خطوبة بس
He would
هم دول
perform
اللي
marriage
عاملين الأكليل
ceremonies.
ويزفهم وكل حاجة إنما اللي
He
جايين
helped
متجوزين
newcomers
يشوف لهم
find
شقة
homes
يشوف
and
لهم
jobs.
شغل يعني كان هو لما يجوا أي حد من
He would pick
إيجيبت
up anybody coming
يروح
from
هو
Egypt
يجيبهم من
from the
الطيارة على
airport
البيت
and
عندي
bring them to us at
وبعد
home.
كان البيت في
I don't remember where he
ريدفورد
lived
أظن
at that time.
لا مش فاكر كنا بنمشي بالعربية في حتة
I think it was in Pendle Hill.
بندل هيل
Yes, that is
برافو
correct.
عليك
We
في
lived in
بندل
Pendle
هيل
Hill.
وكنا بنروح الكنيسة
Every
كل
morning
يوم
we would go
الصبح
to
في
church in
ريدفورد
Redfern
كان
where
هي
we
دي اللي
prayed
كنا
until we bought
بنصلي
St.
فيها
Mary's Church.
أو في العذراء مش أظن كان في ريدفورد الأول وبعدين خدنا كنيسة العذراء وبعدين
We
هو
bought many
عمل لنا كنايس
churches
كتيرة
thereafter, and he
وكان
asked the
بيطلب
late Pope
كمان
Carlos, his uncle, to send him new priests until the Coptic Orthodox Church expanded all over Australia, in most of its states.
So what was your involvement with helping set up the churches?
كنت بساعده في حاجات إن
Father
أنا
Mina
أجهز
was
له
the
مثلا
one to
كان
bake the
هو اللي
holy
كان
bread
بيعمل
for the
القربان
offering
بتاع الحمل والقربان للناس
and for the congregation as
فكنت
well.
يعني بعد العيال ما يروحوا يصلوا ويناموا
After my kids went to
أنا
bed, I
أقف
used to
معاه
assist him with
هو
baking.
بيعمل قربان للحمل وللشعب كمان عشان خاطر نفرحهم
He
كان
would
كل
bake
واحد
one
يعمل
for
كده
each person
قربانة
to make them
ياخدها
happy.
يعني لقمة البركة كان
The
عدد بسيط
congregation was
كنا
small,
بنعمل لهم
so we
قربان
baked small
صغير
ones for each person.
ليهم غير لقمة البركة وكده خد يا ابني خد يا ابني وكده وكانت العيشة
Life
ماشية
was good, and I
وتعرفت
got to
على
know many
الناس
people.
والناس كانوا حلوين.
What about some services did you help the ladies or did you help families?
أي واحد كان بيجي أستراليا
Every newcomer
كان
had to
بيجي
come
على
to our
عندنا
first home.
جايبين العنوان بتاعنا
They arrived with
كان
our address
أبونا
with them.
يروح يجيب الراجل
Father Mina
العيلة
used to
دي
wait for them at the
من
airport.
المطار وبعدين ياخد الراجل يروح
He would
يقدم له
find
شغل
men
كان
jobs on the
شغل
same
في
day
نفس
they
اليوم
arrived.
وأنا أخد الست
I would take the
الولاد
ladies and their
أقدم
kids
لهم
to
في
apply for
المدرسة
school.
لو عندها عيال صغيرة مش هتخش ولسه حضانة وكده
Some women had babies, so
أنا
they
مش
did not
هشتغل
work.
دلوقتي
They stayed at home while their husbands worked. Some left their kids with me and worked to help their husbands. Ours was a big home, and babies would stay and play, eat, etc. And when they grew up, I would take them to apply for school, as I had taken English lessons before coming to Australia. Mummies would come after work to pick up their children. They used to rent apartments near my house because they knew nobody. Everybody would come over to my place, whether to study or to pray. We would gather at my home. Families would come over for tea or whatever, especially after Saturday liturgy. We would pray in Redfern on Sundays. Some people worked on Saturdays. We wanted them to attend the liturgy, so we began to pray on Sundays. I got to know many families with whom I trusted to leave my own kids. They were good families. I would then join Abuna to visit the sick in hospitals or at their homes. I considered all of them my family. We loved each other.
So it sounds like it's the community started growing. What did you do to keep the community together? Were there excursions or things like that?
Yes, we had excursions periodically, at least once a month. We would spend the day out, but every Sunday we would eat after liturgy together. We would spend time together as we pleased. There were young people and people from other denominations as well. Christians, but not Orthodox. They too would come to our church until they had their own churches somewhere else other than Redfern.
Yeah, so the church has started to grow. Yeah. How did you feel leaving behind all of the nice life in Egypt and coming to Australia and starting all over again?
I cried a lot of the time. I cried because I came home very tired. I could barely kiss my children in bed and go straight to bed myself. We would spend a lot of time visiting the sick in hospitals and doing other chores for the ministry. By the time I came home, it was very late and they would be sound asleep. I would leave my children under the supervision of any of my Christian neighbours. People were very nice to me, as if they were my own family, not a congregation unknown to me.
So you had someone helping you in Egypt. You call her a dada, which is like a servant or someone to help. When you came to Australia, did you have someone like that?
No, not at the beginning. Every Sunday, Abuna would bring families from the airport and find jobs for their men. So you had no help at home like you had in Egypt? No, there was nobody to help me. This was a problem for me. So I asked my children to make their own bed. I never asked them to do more. I made sure there was food for everyone, so they would eat whenever they came home, and I wasn't there to feed them. I would forbid them to go out or open the door to anyone. This is what I taught them. My children were good. They graduated, went to university, got married, and I had a very happy life in every aspect until he went to heaven. Things changed. But my children were already grown up and graduated.
So thank you very much for your time. You've told us lots of memories and stories about,
as I can.
Yeah, about everything that happened in Egypt and in Australia, and we really thank you, and may God bless you and give you long life for our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Years of Coptic History.